Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, happy hump day to you, ladies and gentlemen. We got a great show for you today. We're going to start off with the results from last night's primary. There was a primary in several parts of the country, New York, Kentucky, and North Carolina, to name just a few. But the biggest news, I suppose, coming out of the primary was a lot of you out there I know were hoping that Ocasio-Cortez would have her day by getting beaten. That was not the case. She walloped her primary challenger. We'll talk about that. But the biggest story overall is how progressives and Black Lives Matter in particular are gaining a greater and greater hold on the Democratic Party, and we'll get into that. And of course, Obama is officially back now. President Obama did a virtual fundraiser, the first official campaign duty he's done for Biden other than endorse him over the weekend, and over the last couple of days, and raised quite a bit of money for old Joe, and had one or two things to say about the current president, and we'll get into that. And then this whole thing about NASCAR and Bubba Wallace and Nooses and all, it turns out to be one big hoax. Surprise, surprise, surprise. You know, most of these Noose things turn out to be hoax, and we're going to get into that because NASCAR, even though the FBI has dropped the case, NASCAR says they're going to get to the bottom of it, and I think we already have, so we'll talk about that. But we start with a Politico story about Tuesday's primaries, and the top takeaways from Tuesday's primaries: the left, the right, and the weight. And you'll understand what that means in just a moment. The left roared into Tuesday's primaries, hoping to unseat at least one entrenched Democrat congressman in New York and derail the Democratic establishment's pick to face Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. So basically, they're talking about in Kentucky, there was a big primary. It wasn't supposed to be that close. It wasn't even supposed to be a primary, basically, because this one lady, and we'll talk about her in just a moment, was supposed to be the heir apparent and the person that was going to finally take out old Turtlehead, as I affectionately call him. Got a turtle head poking out Mitch McConnell. Doesn't he kind of look like an old turtlehead? Yeah, you know how he talks and everything else. But the biggest news is that the progressives have taken over the Democratic Party. They already have. Now, they're implying that they're beginning to take over. I'm telling you right now, the progressive movement of the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party, plain and simple. The only question now, and what really was they're trying to answer from Tuesday night's results, is how far to the left they have turned, not whether they're turning left, and is Black Lives Matter actually going to become a full-fledged political movement and a complete arm, if not the totality, of the Democratic Party. And I think that it is moving towards just that. Black Lives Matter, and we're going to get more into details. And when I say this, I got to give a little caveat. I'm not talking about the concept of Black Lives Matter. No one really should disagree with that. Of course, if you say all lives matter, which I didn't say, by the way, you get fired, you get algorithmed or whatever. But Black Lives Matter, when I mention them, I'm talking about the organization, the actual political organization, which I got to tell you is an absolute, has its roots in Marxism and communism. There's just no question about that. Do your own research, but if you do it honestly, you'll see that I am absolutely right. But the progressives have absolutely taken over the Democratic Party, and Black Lives Matter seems to be going to play an expanding role in Democratic politics for some time to come. Coronavirus drove a huge number of voters to cast absentee ballots, which won't be tallied in either Kentucky or New York until next week. They're basically saying that they're going to get all the results in from the early voting and the actual at the polling place voting, and then they're going to open up the absentee ballots because they extended the deadline for turning them in. So they want to make sure they get them all in. But the key here, I want you to understand a couple of things. But one of the main ones is they're talking about absentee ballots, not the straight mail-out vote that you keep hearing people talk about. That is different. The major difference is absentee ballots already have a system in place. Every state has slightly different rules, but essentially you have a time frame for requesting one, and there's a chain of command for them and a procedure for counting them. And the biggest thing is you have to request the ballot. It is not automatically sent to you. Now, you can set up in some states like Florida that you basically vote absentee for various reasons, and they automatically send you one unless you tell them not to, or you can cancel it by taking your absentee ballot into a polling place and saying, look, I didn't turn this in, but I want to vote at the polling place. So every state is a little different, so I encourage you to check out your rules. But the basics are the same. You must request the ballot, and there is a chain of command. This straight mail-in ballot that the Democrats and the progressives are pushing, making it sound like, oh, it's no big deal, is a totally different thing. And the biggest single thing is you do not have to request it. The straight mail-in ballot they send to every person that is registered to vote. They could have not been at the same place for years. They may be dead, everything else. They send you a ballot. So you can imagine tens of millions of ballots going out across the country. No chance for fraud there, is there? So there is a big difference, and I want to continue to point that out because the media is trying to blur it and saying that we've been doing this all along, which is not true. And think about this too. Here's another just caveat or just a thought I want to place out there, that if we do even increased absentee ballot, which it looks pretty certain that is going to happen. Absentee balloting, by the way, has been increasing over the years, the number of people doing it, but it is going to skyrocket due to coronavirus. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Not necessarily saying that is a bad thing. I definitely want absentee ballot. I do not want mail-in ballots. That is just them stealing the election. That's all I can say about that. But keep in mind how long, if we have a tenfold increase, which is not unlikely, of absentee balloting come November, it could be a month or more before we get final results in that election. Can you imagine what would happen if the voting was actually close, let alone Biden was winning? But certainly if it's close, even if it's a landslide for Donald Trump, until those absentee ballots come in, it's going to be, oh, Trump's not going to leave the White House. He's stuck he's hunkered down in the bunker and everything else. I can see it now, man. It is going to be a fiasco. But and what would happen if we had straight mail-in ballot? Oh my God, I don't even want to think about what would happen there. But first, I think what would most likely happen is the president would lose and the Constitution would go with him. But let's get into some of the details of what actually happened last night. The little title here they put, Kentucky poised for a photo finish. When the Associated Press ended its vote count late Tuesday night, McGrath, that is this lady that everybody thought was going to be the shoe-in to win the Democratic primary and actually beat McConnell, certainly think that's their best shot. But it says Tuesday night when McGrath, the National Party endorsed candidate. See, they endorsed the National Party actually endorsed this lady, Miss McGrath, and she's a fundraising juggernaut, as they say. She raised $40 million so far, which is a lot of money for someone to take on an incumbent. And she had a 9-point lead over Mr. Booker, who is a black man, has been endorsed by Black Lives Matter, and he has endorsed Black Lives Matter as well. But she had a 9-point lead with about 58,000 votes reported. But, and there's some major buts on that. That's not that many of the vote had come in by late last night. But McGrath's lead is far from secure. The fact that she's even getting challenged by this guy, even if she wins, shows just how strong the movement is for the hardcore leftists in the Democratic Party, the AOC side of the party, basically. The exact number of votes left to count isn't clear, but 58,000 tallied in early returns doesn't include anything from the state's two largest and most Democratic counties, Jefferson and Fayette, home to Louisville and Lexington. So the biggest part of the state hasn't been counted. And in Lexington, in Louisville, I think that is where Mr. Let me make sure I get his name correct. I don't want to mess up his name. Let's see, Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker, he's from Lexington. There's also a big controversy. There have been a lot of protests there over the lady that was killed in one of those no-knock warrants. Her name escapes me at the moment. But anyway, there's been a lot of Black Lives Matter activity in the Louisville area. So they think they're pretty ginned up there. And also even in Lexington, where McGrath area, the Democrat strongholds have not, their tally has not come in. So it is possible that that Booker will win. I think the most likely scenario is that McGrath will hold on, but Booker, if he wins, it is a huge deal. But the fact that he actually is going to make this a tight race is news in and of itself, because it shows that the hardcore leftist side of the Democratic Party, essentially the Black Lives Matter, Ocasio-Cortez wing, maybe Bernie Sanders thrown in there for good measure, are putting a lot of pressure on the Pelosi side of the party, basically. And man, think about that. Your choices between Ocasio-Cortez, Black Lives Matter, Bernie Sanders bunch, or Pelosi bunch. I mean, to me, that is a choice from right out of the lower levels. Let's put it that way. But it says the two counties have said they won't release any vote counts until they've also tabulated absentee ballots, which won't be until next Tuesday. So they're not going to even count the absentee ballots until a week from now. So they're not going to release any voting results. I can tell you, as someone who has run political campaigns, someone who's been a candidate themselves, that would be nerve-wracking no matter what, for a whole week to just be like waiting on the ballots to come out. But imagine this scenario in the general election, because it could absolutely happen that you have these absentee ballots, mail-in vote. I've already been over that. Hopefully that won't happen. But it could mean I think that the final results for the national election, it looks like to me, could take at least 2 weeks and maybe even months before it actually comes out. I'm just preparing you for that. As I said, Booker is the Black Lives Matter candidate. When I say that, I mean he endorsed them, they endorsed him. So that's what it is. So the Democratic Party, this is one of the things that you want to take away from this. The Democratic Party now, people running for the party and getting votes out there, are openly supporting a Marxist organization. Because Black Lives Matter. Do your own research. Don't take mine for granted. And once again, I'm not necessarily talking about the concept of Black Lives Matter. In fact, I'm not talking about the concept of it. I'm talking about the organization at its roots is a Marxist organization. Just check it out. The end is near, it says, for moving on out of Kentucky, going to New York. Excuse me. The end is near for Representative Elliot Engel. Now, this is the guy, he's a long-term incumbent. You may recall, like when Ocasio-Cortez beat out that Crowley fella and edged him out, or beat him out actually pretty good. Everybody was surprised. Just to let you know, in the neighboring district in New York City, this Congressman Engel won by like 74% of the vote. At the same time, Crowley was the 20-some-year incumbent was being defeated. So the fact that he is going to now be defeated just 2 years later after getting 74% of the vote tells you a lot. This is the guy we talked about a couple of weeks ago, you may recall. Check out our podcast. There's a couple of ways to do that. Go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Check out our YouTube channel, John Martin Talks. We're getting more subscribers every day. I greatly appreciate that. You have to spell it all the way out, John Martin Talks. Of course, we're archived on America's Voice News Network. They are not only on Facebook every day. Good morning, howdy, how are you? But they're also, they archive our show. They play it on Channel 219, Dish Network, Pluto Network, all your streaming services like Roku, Fire Stick, Apple. You can download free apps on Android and iPhone. Check it out. They archive our show. And we did have, I want to make a quick announcement to people. We had a internet problem on Friday. A lot of people ask about the Friday show, why it was cut short. That's what it is. If we have those kind of problems in the future, one place you can find our complete show most of the time. I mean, there's always, this is an inexact science sometimes, but we record and upload our show to America's Voice News. So even if we have internet problems and those types of things, you can usually find our complete show on America's Voice News. And I'm talking about their streaming channel, not their Facebook side. So check that out. But anyway, I say all that to get back to the story. Billy Bob tells me, get on back to the story. Got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1. Mine is at John Martin Talks. But this Elliot Engel, he's the guy that a couple of weeks ago, after the Floyd riots were happening, that they had a kind of, I wouldn't call it a rally, but maybe a press conference in Brooklyn, I believe, which is where part of his district is. And he's the one that was trying to get up on stage and say something. Now, he's a longtime incumbent congressman. They wouldn't let him on the stage, and he was hammering in the background about why he wanted to get up there. And he got caught on a hot mic saying, I wouldn't even care about getting up here if it wasn't for the fact that I'm in a primary. So this is the dude that he tell you right out the bat, I don't care. I mean, the Democrats really don't care a lot. I mean, we're going to play a video again here in just a little bit about Joe Biden showing that he doesn't give a hoot about Black Lives Matter. And I'm not talking about the organization. He wants their endorsement. But as what's actually happening in black neighborhoods, these guys don't care. You think they actually care? I'm sorry, you're wrong. But the Associated Press did not project a winner in this Engel race Tuesday night between Engel and middle school principal Jamal Bowman, but the numbers were daunting for the incumbent. Bowman had 61% to 36%, so the challenger was way ahead with 36,000 votes tallied so far. And, of course, you've got the absentee ballots that are coming in there. But everybody, there's no way, it doesn't sound, mathematically, it's probably not likely that this incumbent, Mr. Engel, is going to hold on to his seat. Now, keep in mind that this guy, if he wins, Jamal Bowman, is a Black Lives Matter candidate. He, as I say, I'm just telling it like it is. This is a guy who has endorsed Black Lives Matter, and they have endorsed him. So therefore, to me, he's a Black Lives Matter candidate. I'm just giving you the facts there. And if this guy can actually win, and it appears pretty certain that when all votes are tallied, he will, keep in mind he's defeated a longtime incumbent Democrat in a primary. That rarely happens. Rarely happens. And so that would be, and they're most likely to win in the general election, both Ocasio-Cortez. I know she's got some great challengers on the Republican side, but they're pushing, what did Pelosi say, a drink of water with a D behind it could win there, and probably going to be true. Probably the same thing true in this district. So we're going to have a very likely scenario where we have a Black Lives Matter candidate in the U.S. Congress. Not that there aren't some in there already, but this is someone who's just out front with it, literally campaigned on their issues, which means what? Defund the police. That's one of the things right there. Open borders as well. Trump's pick to secede former. Now we're going to move back to North Carolina. The media is making a huge deal this morning over this particular result. And I'm here to tell you it's much ado about nothing, but let's listen to it. Trump's pick to secede former Representative Mark Meadows. Now, this is a guy who was a long-term representative from North Carolina, said he wasn't going to run for re-election and because he became Donald Trump's chief of staff. So that's why the seat was open. And so let's read on. I want to explain something to you. Trump's pick to secede Representative Mark Meadows in a solidly Republican House district in western North Carolina, Linda Bennett, fell flat on Tuesday. So a person that President Trump endorsed, this is very true, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, lost, losing by 32 percentage points to a 24-year-old Madison Cawthon in a primary runoff. Now, here's the thing. President Trump was really trying to help his friend Mark Meadows because this Bennett lady is a close friend, apparently, of Mr. Meadows' wife. I don't know the relationship for certain, but everything I've read said that they're close friends, and Meadows wanted her to win his seat. So Trump did endorse him. He did not campaign. As far as I know, he made no physical presence there. His only real campaigning or endorsement came in a tweet. Now, I'm not discounting that. That is a big deal. But apparently this young man 24-year-old Madison Cawthon, who came in second in a multi-wing primary when they first did. This was a runoff, basically. But he didn't, I mean, I want to make her get these names right. Miss Bennett didn't get enough 50 plus one vote in the original primary, so they had a runoff. And the bottom line is this Cawthon fella seems to be a very smart young man who worked really hard and is a conservative. So I don't think we got anything to lose there. And the fact is that it is very likely that the Republican, in this case, Mr. Make sure I get his name right, Cawthorn, is going to take that seat come November. So we're not going to lose that seat. But take nothing for granted, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the thing, even because they're making a huge deal over the fact that a Trump-endorsed candidate didn't win. I think it's legitimate, but also it's probably not as big a deal as they're saying. But I keep telling you, and I'm going to keep repeating this over and over. Hopefully you understand the spirit I'm saying is, if you support Donald Trump, if you support conservatism in America, you cannot take anything for granted. You must not only turn out to vote, you must encourage other people to vote. As I call it, the 2 votes behind thing my dad used to talk about. You got a campaign for Donald Trump and conservative causes like they're 2 votes behind, and the next 2 people you see are going to put them over the top. That's what we have to do. Now, also, the biggest thing coming out of this whole thing from last night, and I'll kind of sum it up. Black Lives Matter is taking over the Democratic Party. They are moving in that direction. And what does I say that means? One of them is defund the police. I got a kind of a funny but strange video I want to play for you. I got to set it up. You can't. It's kind of fast paced. It's hard to really hear. I'll come back and tell you. But what it is it's Andrea Mitchell of MSNBC. She's in D.C. on the street, and she's interviewing, I want to get her name right, Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is the non-voting member of the House that represents the District of Columbia. So they're out on the street. This protester charges them. Nothing violent happens. The protester is knocked away. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you because I want you to listen for it. You probably can't hear it. But the 2 women, Miss Holmes and Andrea Mitchell, literally say, and I kid you not, where are the police when you need them? And these are the people that are talking about defunding the police. So let's play it and let's see what you think. Check it out.
Get the fuck up, get the fuck up. What the fuck are you doing? Assault. That's assault. Assault, stop assaulting.
That's good enough. So that's a dude. That's actually a dude running out there in women's pink underwear and bra. I don't know exactly what he was attempting to do, but he absolutely disrupted Andrea Mitchell and Miss Norton's little thing there. And did you hear him say, where are the police when you need them? Well, if you've defunded them or you've taken away their qualified immunity, they're probably kicking it somewhere. You think the police are very worried about those 2 getting accosted? I shouldn't say that. I'm sure they probably are. But let me just tell you this. And before I say this, I want to tell you something that happened to me yesterday. I was at a gas station filling up my old truck, and I saw a police officer over there. And I thanked him and got his attention. I said, officer, I really want to appreciate your service. And we got into a very quick conversation, and you could tell how he felt so glad to have me say that, because he said, man, the media is just killing us right now. He said, it's not much fun being a police officer right now. And I said, I know, I understand, sir. I just want to let you know there are millions more like me that, whether they tell you or not, appreciate your service. I say that to say, if you see a police officer, go up to them, cautiously, because they're probably a little edgy right now. You can't, and just thank them. And I should have played some of this video, but this revolts me. Did you see over the last couple of days where They are trying to take over Lafayette Park in D.C., which is the one that Trump supposedly cleared and walked across there. They want to be a zone like Chomp or whatever they're calling it now in Seattle. But the police officers are out there preventing them from tearing down an Andrew Jackson statue. And people were literally getting in their face. One particular thing is a white guy with a black police officer. And you know that black, and I shouldn't say this, but you know that black police officer, he's human. He's wanting to smack this dude in the head, but he's showing restraint. The guy is literally spitting on his face mask. You know, he's got one of these face shields, luckily. Just, you're the problem. And I'm just screaming, and women too doing the same thing. And it's just crazy. So right now, our police officers could use a little love. So any way you can facilitate that, just simply thanking them is always a big deal, but more now than ever. Let me just sum this whole thing up from last night by saying this. If you vote Democrat in 2020, if you do, take Trump out of the equation, you vote Democrat, or you don't vote at all, because you'll be voting Democrat if you don't vote at all, believe me. And if you're dead, you may be nothing you can do about it. But if you don't vote, if you vote Democrat, let me tell you, a man in pink underwear charging you is the least of your worries coming up, man. The least of your worries. It is getting pretty nasty. Did you see, by the way, I don't know if you caught it. If you watched America's Voice News, you saw it for sure. But Donald Trump had a tremendous rally in Arizona last night. Actually, it was not exactly a rally, but in a way it was. It was for Turning Point USA. It was mostly college kids. Man, was he on top of his game. If you want to see that video, you can catch it on you can catch it on America's Voice News Network. It's also on our Facebook page, by the way. And some people have been asking me about the rally that happened in Tulsa. And it was well attended. Of course, the media tries to portray it. But here's the thing. Just on America's Voice News Network on Facebook alone, just the Facebook coverage of it, and our network or Facebook page, where it had 3 million views as of I checked it this morning. 3 million people just on that. Now, there's many other avenues to look at it. So millions upon millions of people watched the president's rally in Tulsa. But if you did not see his speech before the Turning Point USA people, you ought to see it. And one of the things he pointed out that stood out to me, he said of the top 20 cities in the United States for crime, the top 20 cities for crime, every one of them is totally run by Democrats. Keep that in mind. All right, we're going to move on to Obama is back, man. He made a virtual appearance with Mr. Biden. And, of course, he outshone him. That's not too hard to do. Obama is very, all right, what did Biden say? He's clean and articulate. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, if that isn't racist, I don't know what is. But that's what Biden said. Oh, Biden. But this is what the headline says. This is from NBC News. Shambolic, mean-spirited, Obama in first 2020 event with Biden rips Trump. Former President Obama in his first appearance on the 2020 virtual campaign trail with presumptive Democratic nominee. He's presumptive. Can we just say the dude is, man? Come on. Presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden promised that help was on the way if we do the work. So Obama's kind of channeling when I say you got to get out there and work for Biden. You got to get out there and work for Donald Trump. You can't take anything for granted. Before tearing into President Donald Trump's shambolic approach to government. So he says help is on the way with Joe Biden. Now, is he talking about geriatric care? What kind of care are we talking about? What kind of help is on the way? Because Joe Biden needs some of that. And I got to take a brief moment here of personal privilege and say congratulations to my wife, Charlene. She just passed. She all through all this pandemic, she finally was able to complete her nursing degree and a few weeks ago, and she just took her state of Florida test, and so she passed with flying colors. So Charlene, my wife, I think we got a picture of me and her. I love you very much. Congratulations, baby. She got her, or will have soon, her nursing license, and of course she has an agency that takes care of elderly people. So I'm very grateful for her. I thought I put a picture up. There she is. Now, who's that photo op in the background? That's me. But that's my beautiful now nurse. A man needs a nurse, and I got a dadgum good one right there. I love you, baby. Congratulations. That just shows your dreams can come true no matter what if you just keep working in this country. Back to the story here. At an online grassroots fundraiser streamed online, the former president recalled how various challenges he walked into when he took office. This is Obama talking about how much he was challenged when he took office, including the Great Recession and the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, were made slightly less difficult. Listen to this stuff. This is Obama talking about when he first became president. It was slightly less difficult because he knew that his predecessor, George W. Bush, still had a basic regard for the rule of law and the importance of our institution. Well, I wish you had, brought that into office with you. But think about this, man. Wow. I mean, here's Obama that for 8 years, the full 8 years he was in office, he continuously blamed anything negative on Bush. Now, presidents do that all the time, but to act like somehow he was above that is nonsense. And also keep in mind, what did President Trump, Obama's praising what he inherited to a certain extent as far as the transition from Bush. But what did our president now, our current president, Mr. Trump, did he inherit from Obama? How about a Russian hoax, an FBI investigation, and these whole intelligence services still following the lead from the president in Obama's case that was on their way out? So President Obama not only did not help President Trump in transition, but pushed forward a hoax that they knew was a hoax, was investigating it. The whole thing, you talk about shambolic, the whole transition now we see was a shambolic thing, to use Obama's words. I'm not sure what it means exactly, but he passed on a total hoax to President Trump. He tried to hamstring President Trump and did from the whole time. Think about what President Trump, and I guess if you hate President Trump, you want to give Obama credit. He absolutely weighted down President Trump's first term in office. There's no question about that. Just irks me. But Obama went on to say Trump, on the other hand, was practicing a shambolic, disorganized, mean-spirited approach to government that put an existential danger to American values. What values are we talking about, Mr. Because I hear this all the time from Democrats that somehow Donald Trump is destroying our values. And I wish they would give me a list, because I can come up with my own, but I would love to have a list of values that the Democrats claim that Donald Trump is destroying. Because as far as I can tell, their current list of values is like looting and burning. That's okay. You can't open a church, but you can burn it. You can't open your business, but you can crash it with a key, but you can crash it with a brick. And, bullets are flying everywhere. I mean, I started to do a story about New York, how their murder rate and homicide and everything in between, murder and homicide, I'm starting to sound like a Democrat, like there's a difference, is going up, in Chicago. I mean, you ever seen that old Titleist commercial where they say that there's a Titleist ball in the air? There's so many Titleists are sold. There's a Titleist in the air everywhere in the world at some point. Well, there's a bullet flying in Chicago, especially at night. Every minute of every day, apparently, there are bullets in the air in Chicago. And really all over the country. There has been some black-on-black crime in our area. Several young people lost their lives within about 30 to 40 miles of where I live just over this past weekend. It's tragic, man. And the Democratic Party, and when you see all these statues being pulled down and everything, especially if they have to do with slavery, of course, they're tearing everything down. It don't really matter what it had to do with. But apparently the Democratic Party is trying to wipe away their own history. Because, yes, I said it, and I'm going to say it again. If I say it, it bears repeating. The Democratic Party, if you want to wipe away all vestiges of slavery, okay, let's have that debate. But you got to start with wiping away the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. There is just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The Republican Party was, and I'm not saying they're all that in a bag of chips, by the way. I criticize Republicans all the time if you watch this show. But the Republican Party, the truth of it is that they were founded as an abolitionist party, literally to do away with slavery, which they did under President Lincoln And of course, his statue is supposed to be, they say they're officially going to tear it down, that one in Boston, I think Thursday, I heard. But the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. They just are. There's just no other way to put it. And then, of course, remember what Obama, when he said that people in Pennsylvania primarily, but he could have been talking about a lot of you MAGA hat wearing sons of guns out there. He said, you're clinging to your Bibles and your guns. Yeah, well, probably more now than ever, right? Not to mention, talking about these values, not to mention post-birth abortion. I'm a little tongue-tied today, sorry. I mean, think about it. The Democratic Party now went from safe, legal, and rare in abortion to, within a few short years now, they are for killing the baby after it's born. I guess in Virginia, as long as you make it comfortable, then you discuss what you're going to do after. And that just means there goes the baby. I mean, so these are the people that are, talking about their values are not being shared enough. It's just absolutely nuts. Readjust there. And Obama went on to say, what we have seen over the last couple of years in the White House, talking about under Trump, enabled by Republicans in Congress. I wish the Republicans had got more behind Trump, but he said enabled by them. And check this out, and a media structure that supports them, talking about conservatives, talking about Trump. What media supports Donald Trump? Maybe I could be accused of it here on JMT and all that kind of stuff, but Fox News, there are certain shows that do, but they're leaning more and more and trying to, be the middle of the road. All you find, by the way, let me tell you, Fox, I like your programming in general, but all you find in the middle of the road, take it from an old country boy, what you find in the middle of the road is dead skunks and possums. So be careful what you're wishing for getting in that middle of the road. But the rest of the media, which is like 99% of it, their support who? I mean, they're all about the progressive hardcore leftists. Did they ever give a hard interview question to Barack Obama? Did you ever hear the term without evidence, even when Barack Obama came out and said, if you like your doctor, you can keep them. If you like your medical thing, you keep. One Republican, which I don't agree with, shouted out in the thing. I don't agree with shouting out in the State of the Union address. I just believe in a certain amount of decorum. But he's a liar. Of course, he was true when he said that. But the media, Obama say anything he wants. And they just, they did something with the noses. You can figure it out. But he says media structure that supports them. What a joke. That is not just differed in terms of policy. So it's not just that Trump has different in policy, but has gone to the very foundations of who we are and who we should be. Who we are and who we should be. Should I read that list again that I just kind of went through? Probably not. But, what are the values? I'll put the values of make America first, make America great again. I'll put our Trumponian, if you want to call us that, values against the Obama era and certainly Joe Biden anytime, any place, anywhere. Because the values my values are pretty simple. They come from my parents and the U.S. Constitution, found in the U.S. Constitution, and my background growing up in a Christian home. I mean, that's where my values come from. Now, do I live up to them every day as an individual? No. I fall short of the glory more often than I should. But they're based on solid foundations, the U.S. Constitution when it comes to government, and the Christian principles I was raised on and growing up in a small town in Florida. I mean, that's where it is. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. But Obama continued. He said, that actively promotes division, talking about Trump, and that considers some American, and it says Americans, probably should say Americans, some Americans in this country more real than others, that haven't seen out of the White House in a very long time. Division. Were we more or less divided after Obama? A lot of stuff started during his presidency. It certainly caught fire during his. And as far as this other says, we haven't, talking about where he spread stuff, says that we haven't seen out of the White House in a very long time. Well, guess what? If I'm going to listen to somebody, if I'm going to listen to an African American, and I have no problem doing that, I'd rather listen to Bob Johnson from BET. And we played it. Well, I'm not going to play the video now, but it was about a year ago when he was in the White House, when things were a little better, the pandemic hadn't hit and all of that kind of stuff. He said, and he is a Democrat, a pretty strong Democrat, the first black billionaire. He said talking about President Trump's economic policies, that they were bringing light, in other words, money and prosperity, into neighborhoods in America, talking about inner city mostly, that had never seen it before. And he didn't say that about Barack Obama. He said that about Donald Trump. Open your ears, especially if you're black Americans out there. And I know a lot of, I don't want to lump everybody in one basket by any case, but if you really are paying attention, go back and look at what was happening in your neighborhood during Obama, what was happening in your communities in the first 2.5, 3 years of Donald Trump, and look at what's happening now when there's a resurgence of Black Lives Matter and the hardcore left. And you decide for yourself. You can hate Trump all you want, but if you take an honest look at what I just said, I'll let you make that decision, because I know people are smart enough. Americans are brilliant people, and they're smart enough to make their own decisions. The former president said, talking about Obama, "There's nobody that I trust more to heal this country and get it back on track than my dear friend Joe Biden." Let me check my time. I've got a little bit of time. I want to get in this last story. So he's all about trusting Biden. My question would be, what would you leave your daughters with him? I doubt it, man. But Obama came in here and he said the event marked Obama's first appearance. He raised $7.6 million. I was going to play this Joe Biden crime bill video. I'm not going to do it because I've played it before. I'm running out of time. I'm going to keep playing it periodically, probably at least once a week, because it explains a lot about Joe Biden, the man. So we'll check it out in another time. But I want to get into this last story while we got a couple minutes left. And this is from a Breitbart article. No hate crime. FBI determines Noose in Bubba Wallace's garage to be a rope handle. So if you're not following this, apparently Bubba Wallace, who I got to tell you, I'm not a huge NASCAR friend. I got nothing against it. I was more into drag racing, but I follow it a little bit. But I didn't even know until recently that Bubba Wallace was even a black guy. I just didn't know. It wasn't that I purposely didn't know. I just didn't know. But apparently he found a noose hanging in his garage section at one of the races here recently. Turns out it wasn't quite. Like all the rest of these news stories, it's all like Jesse Smollett. It's all hoaxes. After a short investigation into reports of the noose found in the garage of NASCAR's lone black full-time driver, the FBI, they put like a dozen FBI agents on this. The FBI has determined that what was in the first believed to be a noose was actually a pull rope. A pull rope to pull the garage door up and down. That's what it was. And there's multiple of them in multiple garages, not like one or two. There's literally a dozen of them or more. Agents determined that the rope had been placed there since at least last October. They put like a dozen, maybe 15 FBI agents there, all kind of stuff. Couldn't they just have shown a picture of the rope and a maintenance person said, "Hey, there's one of them in every one of these garages"? I mean, come on, man. Couldn't they have done that? Of course, that doesn't fit the story, so they really get ginned up all about it. Of course, Bubba Wallace is now going to sport a Black Lives Matter car in the race. I mean, so like I say, Black Lives Matter. So now NASCAR is allowing a Marxist organization, once again, talking about the organization, to sponsor one of their cars. I never forget that Black Lives Matter aspect. I never thought I would see the day that NASCAR would knowingly, and they know this, they're not dummies, knowingly let a sponsor of a car from a Marxist organization. I just never thought I would see that. But U.S. Attorney Jay Town and FBI Special Agent in charge Johnny Sharp Jr. said the investigation determined that although the noose is now known to have been in the garage since November 4, 2019, nobody could have, blah, blah. I mean, it was a pull rope. I mean, they go into all this explanation. It's a pull. Couldn't they just come out and say, "Hey, we found out it was a pull rope"? They got to go with all this stuff, man, all this drama. Check my time. I got 2 minutes left. I want to make this thing. So a crew member of Richard Petty Motorsports discovered the noose Sunday. And they keep saying the noose. It's not. It is not a noose. It's never been a noose. And they know it isn't when they printed this article. And this is in fairness to Breitbart, they're taking this from AP. But it's a noose. They're saying a noose when it's not a noose. It never was a noose. Sunday in Alabama racetrack, NASCAR was alerted and contacted the FBI, which sent 15 agents to take the track to the investigation. They determined no federal crime was committed. It was a pull rope. I mean, they just building this thing up for all they were. The statement said the garage stall was assigned to Wallace last week in advance of the race schedule for Sunday, but held on Monday because of rain. Though through video confirmed by NASCAR, it was discovered the Noose, it's not a noose, was in the garage as early as October 2019. It's a pull rope. And then they just keep going on. The agency said the evidence did not support federal charges. There's no evidence. It was a pull rope. And here's the bottom line on this. NASCAR now has come out in a statement. Now, they already know it's a pull rope. I would wonder, who knew it and when did you know it? But they've now said that the FBI's come out and said that, hey, there's nothing to see here. We're closing our investigation. But NASCAR, knowing that it is a pull rope, has vowed to press on about the Noose issue for Bubba Wallace. I mean, my God, when the truth, when like Orwell says, when society no longer regards the truth or is moving away from it, they hate those that are speaking it. So I'm just going to speak it. You can hate me all you want. It was never a noose. It was a pull rope, for God's sakes. Can we drop it now? But no, NASCAR is so crazy for this Black Lives Matter. I know NASCAR fans aren't, but NASCAR, that they're going to continue the investigation. How about asking the guy that sweeps up in there and closes up at night? I think he could have told you, saving all this trouble, hey, I know what that is. It's a pull rope. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it and share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. And by God, if we're thinking pull ropes or nooses, boy, do we all need to pray for this great country, man. We need to pull together. But as I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.